Over to you.
Sure, Avinash. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Ajeenkya DY Patil University basically welcomes you to this exciting webinar on skills for success in turbulent times. My name is Ishan, and I am heading the admissions for ADYPU Novos. I have completed my engineering in information technology and have done my MBA in international business with an overall experience of 10 years. Ajeenkya DY Patil University belongs to the reputable DY Patil group of institutions and is known for fostering innovations. Set up in 2015 through the Maharashtra Government Act, ADYPU has carved out a name for offering highly experiential hands-on programs. Our work is supported by excellent facilities and a highly motivated teaching staff. ADYPU builds on the stellar track record established by DY Patil Group, which has stood for academic excellence for over 4 decades now. We are a modern-day extension of Ajeenkya DY Patil University, offering future-friendly educational programs for the trailblazers, risk-takers, dreamers, and the doers of tomorrow. Founded with the goal of equipping the next generation of Indian students to seize the many possibilities at the crossroads of management, pure science, and technology, ADYPU Novos has been a driving force in this endeavor from its inception. We think India is on a threshold for unleashing massive growth in new industries such as health, finance, space technology, and education, as an increasing number of individuals seek answers via the internet and Web 3.0 technologies. Now, coming to the speaker for the webinar, let me introduce you to Dr. Nicholas Snowden. Dr. Nicholas currently is the program leader of MBA at ADYPU Pune. He is the director of MBA and digital learning at the University of Bradford, UK. He also carries an experience of 25 plus years in higher education sector and has been teaching courses centered on leadership, organizational change, human resource management, organizational behavior, and personal development. Over to you, Dr. Nicholas.
Thanks, Ishan. Welcome, everyone. As I was just saying, very early in the morning here in the UK, 6:30. There's frost on the ground, but I'm going to get you started with a story. If you look at my profile at all, you'll see that one of my passions is around storytelling, and the the fire behind this particular story is relates back to when I did my some research I was doing with the fire brigade in Hull in the UK, and it was round about 2010. I was sitting in the command support center where it's a darkened room. There was a group of firefighters of men training to be leaders of firefighting teams. I was really quite well, bizarre's the wrong word, but it's quite a very tense situation, very serious situation. All you could hear was a roaring fire. There was a garage, a car garage on fire. Firefighters were inside trying to fight this fire. Very serious situation. It needed transformation. We weren't just warming up on a cold day. This was life and death. And there's a two-way radio going on in the background, messages going back and forth between the firefighters and the staff in the command support room where I was. Incredibly emotionally charged, anxious messages here, there, and everywhere. And suddenly there was the bad news came over the radio. 2 firefighters killed. died in this fire, and the trainees were, well, you would think, understandably, in tears. You know, they'd been the cause of the death of these two firefighters, or this one individual in particular, the leader. And so, you know, we had to think about what had gone wrong. And to be honest, however emotionally charged it was, you'll be pleased to hear nothing had gone wrong. It was a simulation, and it was training. So no one was hurt. But there are a couple of interesting points there that I'm, you know, at some point, if you do an MBA, we talk about this type of thing. But one is that such emotions can be generated by a simulation, and a training session. Grown men, firefighters, you know, hardened men used to dragging people out of really serious situations in tears over a simulation. So it works really well, but something had gone wrong in the way that this guy had planned to deal with with the fire that he was trying to control. What had gone wrong? Basically, he had misheard one piece of information that had been transmitted between him and his firefighting team, this simulated team, who were actually another couple of firefighters in a different room. And he just misheard them. But he'd had a plan, he'd learned it, he knew how to execute it, but what he hadn't learned was how to deal with a variation in that plan. He hadn't learned enough about what needs to change if reality is not what we expected it to be. And so often that's the case, that what we think is going to happen does not happen. We have a plan, but reality, as we see in the bottom half of that slide, is very, very different. And what we need to be able to cope with reality is the ability to be agile. We need to be able to change and adapt to conditions, scenarios, situations that are not what we expected, that are unusual, or at least we think they're unusual. They're not what we planned for. That's not to say we don't plan. We do plan, but we also need to plan for the unexpected. And let's face it, in today's world, the unexpected should be the expected, because in a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, complex world, everything's changing. The plans are out of date as soon as they're made. They are, if we stick to those plans rigidly, or if the plan doesn't have sufficient ability to compensate for a VUCA situation, then we are not going to achieve what we wanted to achieve in the first place. So just very quickly, you know, what do we mean by a VUCA world? Volatility. In life, let alone business, things change very quickly and by great amounts. These changes are uncertain. We don't know what caused the change. We don't know what the direction of the changes. We certainly don't know really what to do about the change. So not just big changes, but uncertain changes and complex changes. Lots of different links between unexpected factors, unexpected consequences, between as a result of the interaction of many factors that we could not have predicted. And then ambiguity, ambiguous change, it's just not clear what cause and effect is. It's not clear what the edges of the problem are. You know, there's a saying that a problem well defined is half solved, and that's absolutely true. Defining a problem is really important. The problem is that's incredibly difficult to do, because problems change is ambiguous a lot of the time in the world that we operate in these days. So what I want to talk about now is, you know, how we deal with this VUCA world. What sort of skills, what sort of attributes do we need to have, not just as organizations, but as individuals, in order to be able to deal with the reality of the world, so that we don't end up losing firefighters in unexpected scenarios in a fire. We don't enter work and get our jobs and not know what we're going to do, and so that we can, through appropriate training, appropriate education, learn to be agile and capable of dealing with these difficult scenarios, these difficult situations where we have to change much more and much more creatively than we have had to do in the past. So there was a really interesting study, and I recommend you look it up if you get a chance, done by McKinsey & Co., original work. It's 5 years old now, but the work's been taken on and was a really good, valid study in the first place. And what they did was basically they looked at, they wanted to know that why some organizations did really well in VUCA scenarios, in these hyper changing scenarios, and why some didn't. And so what they did was they looked at over 2,500 organizations, and about a fifth of those, 22%, were what they called agile organizations. And so these agile organizations were the successful ones in this VUCA world. They reported better performance, they reported higher job satisfaction, they reported lower skills, lower staff turnover. They generally did far better, not just financially, but on a human resources dimension than other competing firms. So what was it about these organizations? What was it about the people that worked within them? What were the skills that they had that meant they were successful? Well, it's not surprising, I think, that there were characteristics of these successful agile organizations that were very dynamic, very creative, like a gymnast, that were able to come up with good ideas very quickly, able to capitalize on those and be innovative as well as creative. So they looked and they found there's a whole set of skills and capabilities that agile organizations had, and that there people had, that allowed them to be like the gymnast. What was a little bit more surprising was that there was also some characteristics of stability, some skills, some attributes where the people and the organization did not change within those successful 22% of the sample of this investigation that were constant. And so what we ended up with was a set of skills and attributes that fell predominantly into 3 areas of practice. So there were skills and attributes, practices that were to do with strategy, that fell into both this flexible and this stable sort of perspective. There were aspects of people that similarly fell into both stable or flexible dimensions, and there were elements of processes that had the same format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a bit about each one of those. There were other dimensions that came out of the study, but these were the main 3. So strategy, people, and processes, and these were falling into either being stable or dynamic practices that the organizations and their people exhibited. So to start with strategy, and what the study showed and what seemed to be a pattern in the real world was that in organizations that were truly agile, really good at dealing with the VUCA world, they had actionable strategic guidance. Strategy, as some of you will know, is about a pattern in your actions that are designed to bring about a strategic goal. And actionable strategy is stuff that you can do, and so it's no good having a fantastic strategy that never makes it off the document that it was written into. Strategic thinking is really important, but once a strategy is written, all too often that's it, and it's not properly put into place. And agile organizations had people who were capable of taking that strategy and making it real, putting it into tactics, put it into actions, making it something that was actually happening. The other dimension to strategy was about a shared vision and purpose. And in these organizations, these agile organizations, the whole of the organization shared a clear picture of the purpose of the organization. So people who worked in these places, who were good at making the organization agile, were good at sharing a vision, at expressing a purpose for the organization, a purpose for the business, and getting their colleagues to buy into that. And so those are the skills that were really crucial, that ability to communicate and share a purpose with the colleagues. And those were dimensions that were stable. Those were there all the time. On the flexible side, resources were not allocated on a sort of this is the budget we got for doing research this year. That's the budget we expect to get next year. Didn't work like that. It was in these agile organizations, it was flexible. Money, resources, people were moved around really quickly so that they could seize opportunities really rapidly. So being able to identify where these opportunities were, present a case around why you should move into that particular area of resourcing was really important. And so those are the skills that you needed. These were flexible skills, dynamic skills that resulted in a dynamic, strategic part of the organization that was capable of moving quickly. So some stable bits, some flexible bits on strategy, same with people. And what the study showed us was that stable aspects of these successful agile businesses were that they consistently had people who had entrepreneurial drive. They constantly seeking to well, for want of a better word, monetize, to capitalize on the creativity that sat within the organization, to turn ideas into something useful. That's what we talk about when we talk about entrepreneurial drive, the will and the desire to do that. We also see from the McKinsey study was that the style of leadership was very much about shared and servant leadership. Now, this, it's quite a culture shock for many organizations. And remember, we're talking about a fifth of the sample here, and these were so 1 in 5 were actually good at this. Not every organization, and so leaders in agile organizations share their power. They act to enable their staff. They are not the ones that are have all the answers. What they're good at doing is facilitating their staff, their colleagues, to find the answers themselves. And so that approach to leadership was a common feature in these successful organizations. There was also this community dimension that was observed, this feeling of being part of a family, part of a community, a cohesive community that were working towards the same thing, were supportive of each other, were there if they needed them. And so people who have or can at least learn that skill to be capable of building that sort of community, building culture, building relationships internally, being supportive, those are the skills that you need to be able to survive and thrive in the VUCA world. And we need that all the time. What we don't need all the time is the same job. So in these agile organizations, people did not stay in the same job for extended periods of time. They changed roles, they changed departments, they changed job titles and job objectives, if you like. They moved from department to department. They gained skills and insights from areas outside of their existing skill set. And that makes people creative. That gives people an overview of an organization that you wouldn't get if you simply sat in the meetings, stayed in your own department, had the briefing from the other departments, but didn't actually live, breathe, operate within a different part of the organization. So that role mobility was really important in agile organizations. And if you are a person, if you can embrace that, and you're good at adapting to new situations, then role mobility is something that you will thrive on. So the final major dimension to this was processes. And again, some of the processes in these agile organizations were standardized, very stable, I should say, and standardized. So they worked along predictable, well-tried and tested patterns. Everybody, as a consequence, everybody knew what they were doing. They were structured, and so though that standardization meant that the organizations were very organizations are organized. That's the definition, but they are well organized. They're efficient. They're effective. All the sorts of things that we often strive for, we typically strive for in organizations anyway. But also they were very performance orientated. They had clear targets. They followed up on these targets. They revised them if necessary. They stretched them where appropriate. And it was, the people who were performance orientated did well in these sort of organizations, in these agile contexts, need to be agile. And so if you can develop these skills of being organized, structured, and have clear ways of working, and be working towards clear goals, be good at goal setting, be good at reviewing those goals, and measuring your movement towards them, then you will be good in the world where agility is really necessary. And that skill set needs to be stable, needs to be there all the time. What's far more dynamic and more creative is the way in which people dealt with, as you can see there, the way in which they dealt with information. They didn't hide it. They shared it. It was transparent. It was not something that was protected because it was yours, and we didn't want to give that that valuable property to someone else. It was transparent, it was honest, it was open. So the skill you would need to be successful in that agile situation would be honesty, open, a realistic approach to sharing information. The study showed that when people tried new ways of people did try new ways of operating, they did experiment, they did try change, but they didn't get disheartened when things, as they do, go wrong. They didn't stop, they didn't stop trying, they tried again and again. Rapid iteration, rapid repeating of the experiment with a tweak that attempts to address what had gone wrong in the first iteration, the first time round. That's what we mean by that. So if you are not disheartened, if you can learn to be resilient, learn to be happy to learn from failure, then you will thrive in these sort of scenarios. And when you're doing that, when you're embracing this experimentation culture, you are continuously learning. And so if you're continuously learning, you're continuously changing. These are dynamic processes. These are things that are bringing about change constantly. And you need to learn around to be successful, in agile organizations, agile contexts. You need to be able to embrace this requirement to continuously learn. And so these were the key findings of this study that was initially carried out by McKinsey and Co. And what I want to just give you a quote to finish off with when we've to draw the whole area of being agile together and how we might lead in these times, because MBA students, certainly in the programs that I'm involved with, they are leaders, and their careers are heading towards higher leadership. And so it's really important that we have some useful guidance. You know, that's what we're trying to do ultimately with an MBA, is to guide you into how to be a successful leader. You are leading in turbulent times. You will be leading in turbulent times. And so I'm going to give you a quote. I don't often do this, to be honest, but I'm going to read it to you. A leader is like a clown in a circus. He has the most important role of the whole performance, even though he has only one act to perform. He always knows what the plan is and what's going on. He stands behind the curtain throughout and is always ready to come in if necessary and keep the show going. Now, that was Dr. Jelassi, who's I think he's with in the UN. I think Assistant Director General for Communications and Information in UNESCO. And the quote I thought was really useful, but there are issues with it. So first of all, let's deal with the issues, because I'm not 100% happy with that quote. Issue number one. Maybe it's a bit early. It's certainly early in my day to be asking difficult questions, but maybe you can see what the problems are. I could pick on the list of participants just as I would in an MBA class, and see what your problems you have with that. But I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna tell you. First of all, the implication of that quote is that leaders are men. He has the most important role. He always knows. He stands behind. Now, there is absolutely no reason why that should be true. We all know that leaders is not a function of gender. Traditionally, it's been more about men. So, slap wrists for Dr. Jelassi on that one. The second point that I would take a little bit of an issue with is that I would not, if I were you, go into my place of work and call my boss a clown. I think that would be quite risky, and probably not good for your career prospects. And so don't do that. Don't go into work and call your boss a clown. Slightly more serious point, a clown is, I have a problem with the metaphor, because a clown is a facade. It's something that people hide behind. The real person is underneath makeup and clothes and masks, and the real person is hidden, and that's not a good thing for a leader to be. So there are problems with that quote, but there are also, I think the strengths of the quote far outweigh the weaknesses. And first of all, it shows the importance of leading. How a leader has to be the one orchestrating, planning. They must have a plan and they must share it. But they also need to keep what I would say, keep tabs on the plan. They need to check, constantly be aware of where the plan is on track, where it's getting off track, and they must be ready to jump in and deal with those variations from the plan at a moment's notice. They have to be really, really agile. And that's really consistent with the message from the study that I've just talked you through, that it's really important that in leadership you are constantly aware of the need to change, the need to be agile, but you provide a stable, consistent, reliable framework from which you can support your staff, support your organization to be agile, to change, to adapt to the needs of a turbulent world. So that's really about as much as I wanted to say, but we have, I think, got some time for questions and answers if there are any. So thank you for that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, I think. Ishan, are you hosting the questions. Have we got any questions?
Yes, Dr. Nick. We have one question from Mohammad Shahbaz. So he asks that, sir, can you tell me how cohesive community affects the environment?
It's a good question. Yeah, I'm presuming you mean almost you're talking about the culture of the organization. So if you have a cohesive environment, it means that people are supportive. They're in a if an environment, if the community within an organization was not cohesive, they would be pursuing possibly individual, but certainly team goals rather than organizational goals. They wouldn't be working together. In the worst sort of case scenarios, that can become obstructive. That if I mean, I have a little bit of an issue with competition, certainly internal competition. In some ways it drives people, but if competition is too intense and evolves too much into what you might call rivalry, then one group or one individual would be obstructing another. So if you've got, as you should have, individual goals that feed into team goals that feed into organizational goals, the best way to achieve those is to have everybody trying to work towards the same goals all the time, collectively, cohesively. So it would mean a change in mentality whereby people try to help each other, not certainly not hinder each other, but to prioritize the goals of the broader community, the organization's goals, rather than just be focused on their own little part of that. So seeing the bigger picture, I guess, and so what, how that might manifest itself. It's very much in terms of a culture where people are supportive, understanding, performance orientated. They want to achieve, but it looks much more friendly and cooperative than might otherwise be the case. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure whether is that. Sorry, I can't see the chat.
Yes. So this question was from Mr. Shahbaz. So I hope it has resolved this query. Any more questions, guys? You can also raise hands.
So yeah, it was a good question about how it affects the environment. My interpretation was that was the organizational environment, not the global environment, which is equally important. No, it's more important. It's one of my big worries, I have to admit, one of my big concerns, as it is everybody. Any other questions? Or I'd expect more questions if this was an MBA class.
We have one question also coming from Vajid Raja. So he's asking that, is servant leadership style acceptable?
It's a good question again. It's not a style of leadership that is typical. You look at the study. The study. Actually, I might have some statistics on it. Yeah, that was yes, yeah. So I suppose you have to say acceptable to who, because in some cultures that would not, some sort of regional cultures, geographic cultures, that would be extremely rare, extremely counter to what people were particularly used to. Remember, we are talking about the 22% of organizations that were agile here, and what I suppose that the statistics. I mean, if you get chance, if you want to contact either Ishan or Avanesh for the slides, there is a link on there to the paper itself. But so we're talking about the minority of organizations that were successful, that were agile, but within those, when you look at that 22% of organizations that were agile, almost all of them had this servant leadership approach, shared leadership. And it is quite a leap for organizations to say, look, I'm in the boss's position. I have the boss's hat on, so to speak, but I'm here to serve you. And even by those statistics, it's not a common approach in organizations. Most organizations are far more traditional, where the boss is in charge, the boss tells you what to do, and he or she is sort of the final word on what should happen. Now, that's tradition, a lot of it, and to look forwards, to go into the future, which is really why you would do an MBA, to be a future leader. You've got to look at what the best are doing, not what most are doing. And the best organizations, the ones that are doing well, recognize that their strength, their success comes from the people that they employ. It's a bit of a cliche. It's a bit of a, lots of people say, our biggest asset is our people, but far, far fewer organizations behave like they do. They don't behave like they believe that that's the case. So if you're constantly controlling and directing and structuring the work of the people that you have underneath you in your organization, you're constantly actually restricting them. Now, I'm an MBA director, and I have a number of people that effectively work for me, and but I'm not an expert in marketing. I'm not an expert in operations. I'm not an expert in finance. my organisation and Adipu is I'm part of Adipu as well. We employ specialists to do that. Why would I, as a leader, employ a specialist in a really important area and then say, I know what to do in your area better than you do? Not only is it likely to lead to mistakes, it's also likely to lead to demotivation and alienation from the person that you are controlling. And you may have heard there's what is called at the moment, there's a war for talent. It's really difficult to find good people. You're entering a phase where if you can become expert at something, if you can become expert in business and organization, you will have a bright future, because organizations want talented people and they can't find them. And that's partly, we'll go into all sorts of reasons for that, but a population, certainly in the West, triggered, but no, exacerbated, made worse by COVID, but the trend was already starting, whereby people retired early. They decided they don't want to work as much. The change in values, really, and COVID, when we had lockdown, made people realize there's more to life than work, and the consequence is that many organizations in the West are really struggling to find staff, good staff, and so aside from all the practical issues of, if you employ an expert, you then let that expert do their job, give them the sort of encouragement and support that they need. That's what a servant leader sort of approach would do. Yes, you give them direction, but that's a negotiated thing. So not only are we looking at making best use of the expertise that you've employed, it's also about their job satisfaction. If you can do, and my kids are now of the age where they're thinking about going into working life, and I always say to them, look, find a job that you love. And again, another saying, find a job that you enjoy and you'll never work a day in your life. And if you give people control, if you help them to achieve sort of shared goals rather than direct them and instruct them, they will enjoy their work far more motivational, far easier to motivate people if they're trying to do something well that they enjoy than trying to motivate them by, I suppose, by fear or by authority, use of authority. So if you're short of talent and you're trying to retain people, keep people in work, you need to make them happy. You need to make them, and I don't mean, I'm not saying party happy. I'm saying happy that they can gain satisfaction from the work that they do. And people, experts in their field, want to be able to exercise that expertise. They want to be able to show what they can do, to extend themselves. So servant leadership facilitates that. It's not without its problems. And I think that's probably what you're alluding to there, that, you know, if you give people too much latitude, too much license to do whatever they want, then some will go off in directions that are not productive. Some will do things that jeopardize the organization. Some will be doing things that border on illegal. You know, some will be following their own interests rather than the interests of the organization. So you do have to, even in servant leadership, you do have to provide a framework within which to operate, but it's far more sort of collaborative approach that you should adopt rather than directive. You know, leaders being directive and controlling does not motivate anything like as well as this more collaborative servant leadership approach. Do you have a view on that at all, the gentleman or lady that put that question? Is it acceptable? Is it something you would accept?
Any questions?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I hope Dr. Nick that answers Vadi Rajar's question basically.
Okay, that's fine. Any more questions?
Nick, can I contribute?
Please do, yes.
Yeah. The servant leadership is one of the best style nowadays, which is being adopted in modern organizations and especially in VUCA world. Mainly because of the changing technologies, changing dimensions, as well as the changing consumerism, and a single leader may not be expert in all these fields. So naturally, as you said, then we are dependent on the functional leaders. The servant leadership, success of servant leadership also depends upon the maturity of the followers and the subordinates. If they are unmatured, probably they will start thinking that our leader is weak, and that's why he's taking our help for making decisions. But if they are matured enough, in that case, they will definitely enjoy the freedom and contribute in the organizational goal. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point that, you know, I think the key point there is that the both the leader and the person that is being led. So the person being led becomes the master, and that I think the point there is that the master has to be mature enough, has to be mentally capable of saying, actually, yeah, I'm responsible and capable to lead myself in the right way, and to almost to use my boss as a resource. Now, if you're not, dare I say it, Well, it is about maturity. It is about, as Dr. Londo says, it is about maturity, a mindset. You know, if your mindset, the mindset of the staff, if you as a leader are going to say, I'm going to be your servant to your staff, if the mindset of that staff is that, great, you know, I can go off home early, I can you know, do what I want at work, then obviously that servant leadership style is not going to work. But if the you know, it actually links in, I think, quite nicely with the earlier question around cohesive community. And if, you know, if, for me, that refers to the culture of the organization. And if the culture of the organization is that you're trying to achieve the organizational goal, the benefits of the organizational goal, and that links into the strategy side of it, that you have a clear shared purpose, you know, or if all of that, you know, links back together, then, you know, if your staff are committed to that purpose, your job is to facilitate them working, not to direct them. Not everybody is mentally ready for that responsibility. I think it would be the way I might put it. Good question, though. So there's a question there. Got the best model of a work environment for maximum efficiency. Very easy answer. There isn't one. Do you want me to say any more? You know, we here, I suppose I'm contradicting myself in a sense, in that I'm recommending a model that leads towards agility. But what the reality is that the best model, the best way of working, the best design of an organization is there is no one single right way. I'll say it quietly because my wife is still in bed at the moment, but she has a habit of saying, you know, when we're faced with a problem, the only thing we can do is whatever. And my response is always, there's never only one thing. And all situations, if we learn anything about a VUCA world, is that every environment's different, the environment is always changing. And so you know, the best model for a work environment for maximum efficiency, I don't think there is one. It's what works the best is good leadership, is astute leadership, sensitive leadership. This ability to recognize and I want to say predict, but prediction is so difficult, you know. But predict as best you can what you think is going to happen in the future. Do your best to plan for that, but to make your organization agile, ready to change, capable of change. The other issue that I would have, Kristen, with your question is efficiency. because it might sound a little bit controversial, but efficiency is not always your friend. If you can be efficient, but without being effective, you can have processes that are very, very economically efficient, that use the least resources. But if you are not capable of changing those, the function of that process, then you will be caught out by a rapidly changing environment. Trying to remember her name now. It's Margaret. I can't remember her surname now, but there's a really good YouTube clip, and if anybody's interested, email Avanesh or one of the Adipu team, and I'll pass the link on to them. But it talks about preparedness. She's really inspirational, very down to earth, and you know, she's not one of these sort of she's not made a career out of public speaking. She's a really good track record in business, and she talks about the need for resilience and being prepared. And when you're in a VUCA world, you have to be ready to change quickly. You have to have the skill set in your people. You have to have the resources within your organization, and that is not efficient. You know, if you think about the pandemic, you know, the COVID was a classic example of this, where 5 years before COVID, I think it was Bill Gates was talking about the need to have the resources that were needed ready to go just in case there was a global pandemic. But having those resources ready to go, whether it's to manufacture vaccines or to do the research into what those vaccines should be, the methods to distribute them, you know, he was saying, I'm pretty sure it was Bill Gates, he was saying we need these things 5 years before coronavirus hit. And of course, why don't governments do it? Why don't businesses do it? Why haven't they done it? Because it's not efficient. It's not. If you've got a stack of resources sat in a warehouse somewhere or facilities not being used, then according to the accountants, that's not efficient. But as a consequence, we didn't have the resources available to respond to coronavirus as quickly as we should have, and as a result, millions of people died that wouldn't have done had we been prepared, and yes, if we had been less efficient. Now, I'm not arguing against efficiency per se. I'm not saying we should not be efficient. What I'm saying is that you need to balance the drive for efficiency against the need for resilience and being prepared. Hopefully we've learned a lesson, but I'm not super confident of that. Thanks for the question, though. Any more, or can I go and get my breakfast now? If there's, as I say, please, if there are any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. I like talking about this sort of thing, as you might have guessed. Send your contact details to Avinash. This is not a it's not a sales pitch. It would be. This is intended to get you interested in leadership, interested in particularly in agility. But I would say in MBAs that I'm involved with, this is a central part of what the programs focus on, and we build teams around programs like the one at Adipu that are committed to this vision of creating leaders who are ready to deal with a VUCA world, and so please, if you are interested in doing an MBA, check us out. Have a look at what sort of topics you'll be learning, and consider joining us. Get a hold of Avinash if you or one of the team, and I'm quite happy to chat if that would be of any value.
Sure, Nick. Thank you for giving us a valuable insight. And as you are already late for breakfast, so we can wrap this up now. And I will request the participants to share your queries on the credentials that you can see on the screen. And Ishan also has shared his credentials. So please feel to reach out to us for our MBA Pro program that we launched last year. And then we can take this forward. So thank you for your time and have a great Sunday. What's the remaining of that? So yeah, that's all from our side. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Shan.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Avinash. Thank you, Nick. Dr. Nick.
You're welcome. Bye.